When I finished reading Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, I sat there in silence for a moment. Because this book didn't just teach me about success, it completely shattered everything I thought I knew about it. You see, we've been told our whole lives that success is about talent, hard work, and genius. That if you're smart enough and work hard enough, you'll make it. But what if I told you that's only half the story? What if the real reason people succeed has almost nothing to do with who they are, and everything to do with where they come from, when they were born, and opportunities they didn't even choose? That's what this book revealed to me. And once you see it, you can never look at success the same way again. So let me take you through what I learned, not just the lessons, but the hidden truths that changed how I see the world. The book opens with a story I'll never forget. Gladwell begins with something called the Rosetto Mystery. It's about a small town in Pennsylvania called Rosetto, and what happened there defies everything we think we know about health and success. In the 1950s, a doctor named Stuart Wolfe stumbled upon something shocking. People in Rosetto almost never had heart attacks. In fact, the death rate from heart disease in Rosetto was practically zero. This was unheard of. Heart disease was the leading cause of death in America at the time. But in this one small town, people were living longer, healthier lives than anywhere else in the country. So naturally, researchers rushed in. They thought, okay, it must be their diet. But the people of Rosetto ate pizza, pasta, meatballs, sausages fried in lard, not exactly heart-healthy food. They thought, maybe it's exercise. But most of them worked long hours in quarries or were overweight. They weren't running marathons or hitting the gym. Then they checked genetics, thinking maybe Italians from this particular region had some kind of biological advantage. So they went all the way to Italy to study people from the original Rosetto. Nothing. No difference whatsoever. So what was it? Here's what they finally realized, and this is where my mind started opening. It wasn't what the people of Rosetto were doing individually. It was how they lived together. They had tight-knit families. 3 generations lived under one roof. They stopped to chat with neighbors in the streets. They cooked together, ate together, supported each other. There was no crime, no stress from isolation or competition. The entire town was like one big extended family. The community itself was the secret. And that's when it hit me. Success and health aren't just about individual choices. They're about the world around you, the culture, the community, the environment you were born into. Gladwell uses this story to open the book because it sets up the entire thesis of Outliers. We've been looking at success the wrong way. We focus on the individual, the lone genius, the self-made billionaire, the exceptional athlete, but we completely ignore the hidden advantages, the culture, the timing, the opportunities that made that success possible in the first place. So he asks a simple question that becomes the foundation of everything that follows. What if we stopped asking, what are successful people like? And started asking, where do they come from? That question became my guide through this entire book. And it's the question I want you to hold on to as we go deeper into what Gladwell discovered. Because the book is divided into 2 parts. Part 1 is called Opportunity. Part 2 is called Legacy. And together they reveal the hidden architecture of success that no one talks about. Part 1 begins with something Gladwell calls the Matthew Effect, and he illustrates it with a story about Canadian hockey players that absolutely blew my mind. He looked at the rosters of elite Canadian junior hockey leagues, the best of the best future NHL stars, and noticed a bizarre pattern. A huge percentage of these elite players were born in January, February, and March, and almost none were born in October, November, or December. At first glance, this makes absolutely no sense. Why would your birth month have anything to do with how good you are at hockey? But here's the key that unlocks everything. In Canada, the cutoff date for age class hockey is January 1st. So if you're born in January, you're one of the oldest kids in your age group. If you're born in December, you're one of the youngest. Now imagine you're 6 years old, just starting hockey. You're playing with other 6-year-olds, but some of those kids are almost 7, 10, 11 months older than you. At that age, those months make a massive difference. The older kids are bigger, faster, more coordinated, more physically developed. Coaches see them and think, wow, this kid's really talented. So they get selected for the elite team. They get better coaching, more ice time, tougher competition. Meanwhile, the younger kids, who might have the exact same potential, get overlooked. They don't get the same opportunities. They practice less. they fall behind. And this gap compounds over time. By the time they're 10, the January kids have had 4 extra years of elite training compared to the December kids. By the time they're teenagers, the gap is enormous. The January kids are on track to the NHL. The December kids quit hockey altogether. Gladwell calls this the Matthew effect, named after a verse in the Bible that says, "For unto everyone that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he hath." In other words, success breeds more success. Small advantages early on compound into massive advantages later. When I read this, I started thinking about my own life. How many opportunities did I get just because of timing? Because I was in the right place at the right moment? And how many opportunities did I miss because the timing was just slightly off? And here's the uncomfortable truth that Gladwell forces us to face. We like to think we live in a meritocracy where the best rise to the top based purely on talent and effort. But the reality is, a lot of success comes down to arbitrary advantages, things you didn't earn, didn't choose, didn't even know you had. This isn't about fairness or unfairness. It's not about complaining. It's just the reality of how success actually works. And once you see it, you start noticing it everywhere. In hockey, it's birth month. In education, it's what school you went to. In business, it's who you knew. In tech, it's when you were born and what tools were available to you at the right time. Which brings us to probably the most famous idea in the entire book. Gladwell asks another question. If practice and opportunity are what matter, then why don't the smartest people in the world automatically become the most successful? You'd think the people with the highest IQs would be running companies, winning Nobel Prizes, changing the world. But that's not what happens, and Gladwell shows us why. He introduces us to a man named Christopher Langan. Langan has an IQ estimated between 195 and 210, one of the highest ever recorded. He's been called the smartest man in America. He taught himself advanced mathematics as a child. He can read and understand philosophy in multiple languages. He thinks on a level most of us can't even comprehend. So, where is he now? What did he accomplish with all that intelligence? He worked as a bouncer at a bar. He lived on a horse farm. He never finished college. Despite being a certified genius, he never achieved the kind of world-changing success you'd expect from someone that smart. Why? What happened? Gladwell explains that intelligence alone isn't enough. In fact, once your IQ is above a certain threshold, around 120 or so, more IQ doesn't actually correlate with more success. A person with an IQ of 150 isn't necessarily more successful than someone with an IQ of 120. What matters more than raw intelligence is something called practical intelligence, the ability to read situations, the ability to persuade people, the ability to navigate social hierarchies, to know what to say and when to say it, to advocate for yourself. And here's the key. Practical intelligence isn't something you're born with. It's something you learn from your environment, from your family, from your upbringing. Christopher Langan didn't have that. He grew up poor in rural Montana. His stepfather was abusive. His mother couldn't help him navigate the world of institutions, schools, universities, bureaucracies. When he got a scholarship to Reed College, he lost it because his mother forgot to fill out a financial aid form. He tried to convince the administration to let him stay. He didn't know how to talk to them. He didn't have the skills to advocate for himself, so he dropped out. Later, he tried to transfer to Montana State. Same thing happened. A bureaucratic mix-up. He needed to convince someone to help him. He didn't know how, so he dropped out again. It wasn't because he wasn't smart enough. It was because he didn't have the practical intelligence to navigate the system. Now compare that to Robert Oppenheimer, the physicist who led the Manhattan Project and helped build the atomic bomb. Oppenheimer was brilliant, yes, but he was also raised in a wealthy family in New York. He went to elite schools. He learned how to charm people, how to persuade, how to negotiate. And this is where the story gets wild. When Oppenheimer was a student at Cambridge, he became depressed and tried to poison his professor by leaving a chemical-laced apple on his desk. He should have been expelled. He should have been arrested. But he talked his way out of it. He used his practical intelligence, his social skills, his ability to read the room and convince people to give him another chance. Later in life, he used that same skill to convince the United States government to put him in charge of the most important and secretive scientific project in history, even though he had never managed anything, even though he had no administrative experience. He knew how to work the room. He knew how to make himself indispensable. When I read this, it hit me hard. Success isn't just about being the smartest person in the room. It's about knowing how to work the room. So where does practical intelligence come from? How do you learn it? Gladwell goes even deeper here, and this section made me rethink my entire childhood. He references a sociologist named Annette Leroux who studied how different families raise their children, and she found two completely different parenting styles. The first is called concerted cultivation. This is how wealthier, more educated families tend to raise their kids. They enroll them in organized activities, soccer, piano, debate club. They encourage them to ask questions, to challenge authority, to negotiate. They talk to their children like equals, asking their opinions, reasoning with them. They actively teach their kids how to navigate complex institutions like schools and doctors' offices. The second style is called natural growth. This is more common in working-class families. Parents let their kids play freely, without structured activities. They teach respect for authority, not questioning it. They don't intervene as much in their children's interactions with teachers or doctors. They trust the system to work. Now, neither style is better or worse as a parenting philosophy. But in terms of preparing kids for success in modern society, concerted cultivation gives them a massive advantage. Kids raised with concerted cultivation grow up knowing how to talk to authority figures. They know how to negotiate with teachers. They know how to ask their doctor questions. They know how to advocate for themselves. They have a sense of entitlement, not in a spoiled way, but in the sense that they believe they deserve to be heard and helped. Kids raised with natural growth often don't have that. They're taught to accept what authority figures tell them. They don't learn to question, to push back, to navigate complexity, and that difference shows up everywhere. In school, in job interviews, in salary negotiations, in life. Christopher Langan didn't have concerted cultivation. Robert Oppenheimer did, and that made all the difference. When I reflected on this, I had to ask myself, did I learn to advocate for myself growing up? Did I learn to negotiate, to ask questions, to challenge unfair systems, or did I just accept things as they were? And more importantly, if I didn't learn those skills as a kid, can I learn them now? The answer, I believe, is yes. Practical intelligence can be learned. You can train yourself to speak up, to negotiate, to navigate complexity. It's not too late. But the book isn't done revealing uncomfortable truths yet. Gladwell then tells the story of a man named Joe Flom, and this is where all the ideas start coming together. Joe Flom became one of the most successful lawyers in the world. He co-founded a firm called Skadden Arps, which became a giant in corporate law. He was a legend in his field, but his success wasn't random. Gladwell breaks it down into 3 specific factors, and each one reinforces the theme of the book. First, timing mattered. Joe Flom was born in 1930, right in the middle of the Great Depression. That timing mattered because birth rates were low during the Depression. So when Flom entered the job market in the 1950s, there was less competition. If he'd been born 10 years earlier, during the baby boom of the 1920s, he would have been competing with millions more people for the same jobs. Also, he came of age at the exact moment when corporate law was exploding. Hostile takeovers, proxy fights, litigation, these were just becoming big business in the 1960s and 70s. He was in the right place at the right time. Second, being an outsider forced him to innovate. Flom was Jewish, and in the 1950s and 60s, the big prestigious white shoe law firms in New York didn't hire Jews. So Flom couldn't get a job at a top firm. Instead, he had to start his own practice and take cases no one else wanted. The cases he took were considered messy and unglamorous. Hostile takeovers, proxy battles, litigation. The established firms didn't want to touch them. But Flom took them because he had no choice, and guess what? Those messy cases became the future of corporate law. By the time the big firms realized it, Flom was already the expert. He'd spent years mastering exactly the kind of law that was about to explode. His disadvantage became his advantage. Third, cultural legacy shaped his work ethic. Flom's parents were Jewish immigrants who worked in the garment industry in New York City. And Gladwell explains that Jewish immigrants in that era had a very specific culture. They worked incredibly hard. They valued autonomy and entrepreneurship. They believed that meaningful work led to success. That culture was passed down to Joe Flom. He had a relentless work ethic because it was baked into his upbringing. It was part of his cultural DNA. When I read this, I realized that success isn't just about individual effort. It's about being born at the right time, in the right culture, with the right obstacles that force you to innovate. You can't control when you're born. You can't control your cultural background, but you can recognize the opportunities in front of you, including the ones disguised as obstacles. And that idea that your background and timing and culture shape your success becomes the foundation of the second half of the book. Because Gladwell is about to show us something even more profound. Your cultural legacy, the habits, values, and behaviors passed down through generations, can literally determine whether you succeed or fail. And sometimes, that legacy can even kill you. Part 2 of the book is called Legacy, and it starts with one of the most intense stories I've ever read. Gladwell takes us to the Appalachian Mountains of Kentucky in the 19th century. There were two families there, the Howards and the Turners. One day, a small dispute broke out between them. Maybe it was over land or an insult or something minor. It doesn't really matter, because what happened next was shocking. That small dispute escalated, and over the next few decades it turned into a bloody, multi-generational feud. Dozens of people died. Families were destroyed, all over something that started as a minor disagreement. Why? Why would a small argument turn into a war that lasted generations? Gladwell explains it through something called a culture of honor. The people who settled in Appalachia were mostly herders. They raised livestock, sheep, cattle, pigs. And when you're a herder, your wealth is vulnerable. It's portable and easy to steal. If someone takes your animals, you lose everything. You can't just call the police. There were no police. You had to defend yourself. So herders developed a culture where you had to protect your reputation fiercely. If someone disrespected you, you had to respond with violence. If you didn't, you'd be seen as weak. And if people saw you as weak, they'd take advantage of you. They'd steal from you. You'd be ruined. So honor and violence became survival strategies. And that culture got passed down through generations, even long after people stopped hurting, even after the circumstances changed. Even today, studies show that people from the South are statistically more likely to respond aggressively to insults than people from the North. It's not genetics, it's cultural legacy. Gladwell even describes a psychological experiment that proves this. Researchers had college students walk down a narrow hallway. A Confederate working with the researchers would bump into the student and call them an offensive name. Then, they'd measure the student's reaction. Northern students mostly shrugged it off. They laughed or ignored it. But Southern students got visibly angry. Their cortisol levels spiked. Their testosterone increased. They were ready to fight. Why? Because they inherited a cultural script that says, you don't let anyone disrespect you. When I read this, it made me think deeply about my own behavior. How much of what I do is actually me making a conscious choice? And how much is just inherited programming from my culture, my family, my ancestors? We like to think we're individuals making free choices. But the truth is, we're all carrying invisible scripts written long before we were born. And sometimes those scripts help us. Sometimes they give us strength and resilience. But sometimes they hold us back. Sometimes they hurt us. Which leads to one of the most shocking chapters in the entire book, and honestly one that made me question everything I thought I knew about culture. Gladwell investigates a disturbing pattern. In the 1990s, Korean Air had one of the worst safety records of any major airline in the world. Planes were crashing at an alarming, unacceptable rate. Investigators rushed in. They examined the wreckage, the maintenance logs, the training programs, and here's what they found. The crashes weren't caused by mechanical failure. The planes were fine. The crashes were caused by communication breakdowns in the cockpit. Specifically, they were caused by culture. Korean culture has what sociologists call a very high power distance index. That means there's a strong emphasis on respecting hierarchy and authority. Junior officers are taught not to question their superiors. You don't challenge someone above you in rank. You defer. You hint. You suggest, but you don't directly contradict. In most situations, that's fine. But in a cockpit, during an emergency, that cultural norm becomes deadly. Gladwell describes one crash in detail, and it's heartbreaking. The plane was flying into New York in bad weather. The first officer noticed they were running low on fuel. He tried to tell the captain, but he didn't say, "We're running out of fuel, we need to land now." Instead, he hinted. He said things like, "The fuel is a little low and weather is pretty bad." The captain didn't pick up on it. He kept circling, waiting for clearance to land. The first officer kept hinting, getting more and more anxious, but never directly challenging the captain's decision. The plane ran out of fuel. It crashed. 73 people died. In another crash, the flight engineer noticed ice building up on the wings, a critical, life-threatening problem. He mentioned it to the captain, softly, indirectly. The captain didn't take it seriously. The plane crashed. It wasn't that these pilots were incompetent. They were skilled, experienced professionals. But their cultural legacy, the way they were taught to communicate, the way they were raised to respect authority, made it almost impossible for them to be direct in a crisis, and people died because of it. Eventually, Korean Air brought in a consultant named David Greenberg, and he did something radical. He made a rule that all Korean Air pilots had to speak English in the cockpit. Not Korean, English. Now, this wasn't because English is a better language. It was because speaking a foreign language disrupted their cultural scripts. When they spoke English, they weren't speaking as Korean subordinates to Korean superiors. They were just pilots communicating. The hierarchy softened, the communication became more direct, and the crashes stopped. When I read this chapter, I had chills, because it made me realize that sometimes the culture you inherit can be your greatest weakness. And if you don't recognize it, if you don't step outside of it and see it for what it is, it can destroy you. So the question became, what cultural scripts am I carrying that might be holding me back? What invisible programming is running in the background of my mind? And how do I rewrite it? But culture isn't always a disadvantage. Sometimes it's a superpower. And that's what the next part of the book reveals. Gladwell takes us to the rice paddies of southern China, and at first, I didn't understand why. What do rice paddies have to do with success? But then he explains, and it all makes sense. Rice farming is one of the most labor-intensive forms of agriculture in human history. It's not like wheat farming, where you plant seeds and wait for rain. Rice farming requires incredible precision, patience, and relentless effort. You have to build intricate irrigation systems to control water levels. You have to plant each seedling by hand in perfectly spaced rows. You have to manage the water throughout the growing season. Too much and the rice rots, too little and it dies. You work from dawn until well past dusk, every single day. There's an old Chinese proverb that says, "No one who can rise before dawn 360 days a year fails to make his family rich." Rice farming created a very specific cultural legacy, a belief that hard work directly leads to results, that effort equals success, that if you're persistent, precise, and patient, you will succeed. And if you fail, it's because you didn't work hard enough. That culture got passed down through generations. Even families that no longer farm rice, even people who've never touched a rice paddy, still carry that cultural belief. Work hard and you'll succeed. Give up and you'll fail. And it shows up in how students approach learning, especially math. Gladwell points out that Asian students, on average, perform better in mathematics than Western students. And for a long time, people explained this with stereotypes about genetics or inherent intelligence. But that's not the reason. The reason is cultural legacy. Math is a lot like rice farming. It rewards persistence. It rewards effort. If you keep working at a problem, if you don't give up, you'll eventually figure it out. It's not about being naturally smart. It's about being willing to keep trying. Asian students, shaped by a cultural legacy that says effort equals results, are more likely to persist when a math problem gets hard. Western students, on average, are more likely to assume, "I'm just not good at math," and give up. Gladwell cites a study where students from different countries were given a very difficult math problem and told to work on it. Asian students worked on the problem for an average of 40 minutes before giving up. American students gave up after an average of 10 minutes. It's not about intelligence. It's about belief. The belief that if you keep trying, you'll figure it out. When I read this, it completely changed how I think about my own abilities. Whenever something gets hard, do I assume I'm not smart enough? Or do I assume I just haven't practiced enough yet? And I realized persistence isn't just a personality trait. It's a cultural habit. And if you didn't inherit it, you can build it. You can choose to adopt the rice paddy mindset. You can choose to believe that effort leads to results. You can rewrite your script. But there's one more story Gladwell tells, and it might be the most important one in the entire book. He introduces us to a girl named Marita. She's 12 years old, and she's a student at a charter school in the Bronx called KIPP Academy. KIPP stands for Knowledge is Power Program, and it's one of the most successful charter school networks in America. These schools take kids from poor neighborhoods, many from broken homes, many from families where no one went to college. And yet, these kids are outperforming students from wealthy suburban schools. How? The answer is simple but radical. They spend more time learning. KIPP students go to school from 7:25 in the morning until 5 in the evening. They go to school on Saturdays. They have a much shorter summer break. They do hours of homework every night. It sounds extreme, and it is. Marita wakes up at 5:45 in the morning. She takes 2 buses to get to school. She's in class all day. She gets home late. She does homework. She goes to bed. She wakes up and does it again. She has no time for friends, no time for TV or social media, no time for hobbies. She's essentially sacrificing her childhood for education. And Gladwell asks, is that fair? Should a 12-year-old have to work that hard? But then he reveals something that made me see the whole picture differently. The reason poor kids fall behind in school isn't because they're less intelligent. During the school year, poor kids and wealthy kids learn at roughly the same rate. They make similar progress. But during summer break, everything changes. Wealthy kids don't stop learning during the summer. They go to camps. They take family vacations to museums and historical sites. They read books. They get tutored. They keep their skills sharp. Poor kids don't have those opportunities. They fall behind during the summer, and that gap compounds every single year. By the time they're in high school, wealthy kids have had years of extra learning that poor kids didn't get. Not because they're smarter, just because they had more time and more opportunities. KPP eliminates that gap by eliminating downtime. They give poor kids the same time advantage that wealthy kids naturally have. They level the playing field through sheer time and effort. Marita's bargain is this. She gives up her childhood now in exchange for a future that her parents and grandparents never had access to. She sacrifices free time for opportunity, and it's working. She's thriving academically. She's on track for college. She's breaking the cycle. When I read this, I felt 2 things at once: inspiration and sadness. It's inspiring because it proves that opportunity and effort can overcome disadvantage. That success isn't reserved for people born into wealth. That you can change your trajectory if you're willing to put in the time. But it's also heartbreaking. Because why should a 12-year-old girl have to work twice as hard just to have the same chance as a kid born into a wealthy family? And yet, that's the reality. The world isn't fair. Opportunity isn't distributed equally. And if you want to succeed, you have to recognize that and decide what you're willing to sacrifice. The question Gladwell leaves us with is this: what are you willing to give up to get ahead? And he doesn't judge the answer. He just makes you face the question honestly. At the very end of the book, Gladwell does something I didn't expect. He turns the lens on himself. He reveals that his mother is Jamaican, and he traces his family history all the way back. His great-great-great-grandmother was a slave in Jamaica. And through a series of events, some fortunate, some painful, some random, her descendants slowly climbed the social ladder. His grandmother was born with lighter skin, which in the colonial system gave her advantages. She got an education. She became a teacher. His mother became a writer and therapist in England. And Gladwell became one of the most famous authors in the world, but he's completely honest about it. His success wasn't just about his talent or his effort. It was about the opportunities his ancestors fought for, the timing of his birth, the culture he inherited, the advantages he didn't choose. He writes, "Who we are cannot be separated from where we're from," and that line is the thesis of the entire book. Success is not a solo act. It's not about lone geniuses pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. It's a collective effort shaped by your family, your culture, your moment in history, your opportunities, your access. And once you see that, two things happen. First, you become humble. You realize how much of your success was luck, timing, and the work of people who came before you. Second, you become empowered, because if success is shaped by environment and opportunity, then you can create better environments and opportunities. For yourself, for others, you can shift the odds. When I closed this book, I sat in silence for a long time, because everything I thought I knew about success had been turned upside down. I used to think success was about willpower, talent, and grinding harder than everyone else. And those things do matter, but they're not the whole story. Success is also about when you were born. The Matthew effect showed me that. Small advantages early on compound into massive advantages later. Success is about the opportunities you had to practice. The 10,000-hour rule taught me that. Talent is overrated. Deliberate practice is what builds mastery. Success is about the practical intelligence you learned growing up. Whether you were taught to advocate for yourself, to negotiate, to navigate systems. And if you weren't, you can still learn it now. Success is about the cultural legacy you inherited, the beliefs about work, effort, honor, respect. Some of those beliefs help you, some hold you back, and you have to learn which is which. Success is about the time you're willing to invest. Like Marita, like the KIPP students, like anyone who's ever climbed from nothing to something, you have to be willing to sacrifice. And most importantly, success is never just about you. It's about a web of invisible advantages, opportunities, timing, culture, and support. You don't succeed alone. You succeed because of a network of people and circumstances that came together at the right time. So what does that mean for you? Here's what I took away. First, stop worshiping talent. Start building skills. You don't need to be a genius. You need to find something you care about and put in your 10,000 hours. Find a way to practice obsessively. Create opportunities to get better. Second, recognize your advantages and use them. What opportunities do you have right now that other people don't? Don't take them for granted. Use them. Maximize them. Third, if you didn't inherit certain advantages, create them. You didn't grow up learning to negotiate? Learn it now. Read books, watch videos, practice. You didn't get extra time to study? Make more time. Wake up earlier. Cut out distractions. You can rewrite your script. Fourth, understand your cultural legacy. What beliefs did you inherit about work, money, success, effort, authority? Which ones serve you? Which ones hold you back? And are you willing to question them? Fifth, help others. If you've succeeded, remember that you had help. You had luck. You had timing. So pass it on. Mentor someone. Open a door for someone who doesn't have the same access you did. Create opportunities for others. Because here's the truth that Gladwell reveals in every page of this book. Success isn't random. It's not magic. It's not just about being born special. Success is built on hidden patterns, timing, opportunity, culture, effort, legacy. And once you see those patterns, you can work with them instead of against them. You can't control when you were born. You can't control where you came from. But you can control how hard you practice, how much time you invest, how much you're willing to learn, and whether you help others climb the same ladder you did. And you can stop beating yourself up for not being naturally talented, because talent is overrated. Opportunity and effort are what actually matter. So here's my challenge to you. Pick one skill, one thing you want to master. Commit to your 10,000 hours. Find opportunities to practice or create them. Learn practical intelligence. Study how to communicate, negotiate, and advocate for yourself. Understand your cultural programming and decide what to keep and what to let go. And build your success with intention, not by hoping you get lucky, but by recognizing the patterns and working with them. Because success isn't magic. It's not luck. It's not just talent. It's hidden advantages, relentless practice, cultural legacy, perfect timing, and the courage to see the world as it really is, and then do something about it. That's what Outliers taught me. And I hope it changes how you see success too. Because once you see it, you can never unsee it. And that's when everything shifts.